I've decided to wear something I might wear in hosting office hours based on what I've worn in office hours in the past. Similar style, long sleeve t-shirt and glasses. This is a few heart references in the Odyssey by Homer, pages 121 through 180, 2025 U Chicago Press Edition. I am Tanis, she, her, hers of Seattle, and inspired by my cardiology self-experimentation, here I talk through a few heart references in the Odyssey by Homer, pages 121 through 180. Initial text by Homer, approximately 8th century B.C. The specific book/edition, The Odyssey by Homer, translated by Daniel Mendelsohn, 2025, the University of Chicago Press Edition, hardcover, pages 121 through 180. I read today, same day of filming this, Wednesday, 3 June 2026 AD. These are part of my notes from reading The Odyssey by Homer for the second time. So I watched out for heart stuffs invoking the art of war and the Iliad style/approach, which I've done before. So it's the pages, so here we go. Page 121, quote, deep in his heart he was thinking of, end quote, heart could generate/be a sanctuary for thoughts. So I do quote, and end quote is that which is in the book, and then I provide my comment on it, note on it. Page 123, quote, my heart had long since been bent on going back home, end quote, heart registered longing/settled plan. Page 124, quote, heart stands fast, end quote, quick commitment, question mark. Page 124, quote, even if his heart had been made of iron, end quote, metal of iron for heart description/assessment/characterization. Page 127, quote, deeply touched her heart, end quote, internal component could be reached without physical intrusion. Page 127, quote, comrades are losing heart, end quote, heart could experience loss. Page 128, 133, quote, many thoughts swirling around my heart, end quote, heart active. Page 129, quote, steeling our hearts for action, end quote, and, quote, we had steeled our heart, end quote. Metal and heart action, characterization, question mark, heart could be prepared. Page 130, quote, how much am I losing heart, end quote, waiting reference. Page 130, 132, quote, straight away the heart in my breast was shattered, end quote. Physical/bodily heart could quickly be subdivided. Page 132, quote, nor did my heart any longer wish to go on, end quote, the heart gets tired. Page 132, quote, straight away my heart, end quote, direct, like blood flow, question mark. Pages 135, 162, quote, hearty hearts were stunned, end quote, or similar stunned note, quote, deviant temporary heart state, that's my note. Page 135, quote, heart was full to bursting, end quote, there can be too much for the heart. Page 136, quote, what's in your hearts is plain, ... is plain, end quote. Yes, blood content such as blood glucose. Page 136, quote, her knees gave way and her heart dissolved, end quote. Heart-related fainting, perhaps. Medics brought up blood pressure as possibly behind my own fainting in 2009-2014. Page 137, quote, his heart prodded him, end quote, compulsive heart. Page 137, 140, quote, his heart like a lion's, end quote, animal heart superior to man heart. Page 139, quote, great-hearted, female descriptor, quote, great-hearted, end quote, female descriptor. Page 139, quote, heart torn to shreds, end quote, heart could hurt. Page 140, quote, vex my mind and heart, end quote, dwell. Page 141, quote, heart in her breast, end quote, heart of female in breast locality bodily. Page 144, 172, quote, gaze to his heart's content, end quote, vision and heart linked. Page 144, 146, 149, 157, 179, quote, great-hearted Odysseus, end quote, or variation, Odysseus descriptor. Page 144, 146, quote, tearing his heart to shreds, end quote, an individual could hurt their own heart. Page 147, quote, sated his heart with eating, end quote, food consumption, heart linkage, triple exclamation point for me. Page 147, quote, yielded her heart to, end quote, I remember this from my February 2011 reading, WOA, context/passage, so I read and remember that in the context and passage. Page, even if not the exact wording. Page 147, quote, nor is the heart in this breast of mine made of iron. No, it is merciful, end quote. Iron is heart quality distinguisher. Page 147, quote, this heart can endure great woe, end quote. I was impressed with this back in 2011, still am, in that Odysseus/the author, Homer, did not shy from taking on additional burden. Page 150, quote, hearty dishes, end quote, could be food could be of / like the nature of the heart. Page 150 and 177, heart grew, quote, heart grew all the more angry, end quote, and quote, heart grew more indignant, end quote, intensified. Page 151, heart, quote, heart within him went slack, end quote, limp. Page 151, 152, 154, 155, quote, great-hearted, end quote, spirit descriptor. Page 153, 154, quote, turning this over in his heart and his spirit, end quote, are very closely worded, attention shared by heart and spirit. Page 153, quote, his heart looked destruction in the face, end quote, difficulty addressed by direct heart. Page 154, quote, heart within him quailed, end quote, what does this mean? I remember the professor emphasizing context. Sorry, dude, I couldn't figure it out this time either. Page 157, 163, 2 times, 166, 170, 2 times, 171, quote, great-hearted, end quote, male, not Odysseus, descriptor. Page 157, quote, delighted the princess's heart, end quote, heart happy. Page 160, quote, Leto's heart is bursting with joy, end quote, heart happy to excess. Page 160, quote, he debated in his mind and in his heart, end quote, this Tanis says no, remains unchanged from 2011. Page 161, quote, courage into her heart, end quote, female with heart courage. Page 161, quote, for he feared that by taking her knees he would anger the maiden's heart, end quote, tactile could impact heart fear, impart heart fear. Page 161, quote, their hearts must always be aglow, end quote, heart happy. Page 161, quote, luckiest heart of all, blessed beyond all others, end quote, a heart could be lucky. Page 162, quote, may the gods grant you whatever your heart desires, end quote, stop bringing apart, it is in excess, this remains unchanged from 2011, perhaps a translating to English problem, this also remains unchanged from 2011. Page 166, 170, quote, she takes you into her heart, end quote, acceptance by female. Page 168, 169, quote, dear to her heart, end quote, soft spot. Page 170, quote, his heart found much to ponder, end quote, restless. Page 173, 175, quote, drunk to their heart's content, end quote, beverage consumption, heart linkage, triple exclamation point for me. Page 173, 180, quote, say what the heart in my breast commands me to say, end quote, heart compulsion speaking. Page 174, quote, hearts are filled with grief, end quote, emotion can sate heart. Page 174, quote, grief in my heart and yet, end quote, emotion sates only emotion in heart. That is gold worthy in my opinion. Homer, good job. Page 175, 177, quote, heart within my breast, end quote, or similar, heart location in self-description. Page 176, the quote, the heart inside me rejoiced, end quote, heart happy independent of rest of body. Page 176, quote, heart of mine sorely troubled, end quote, heart hurt signified preoccupied state. Page 179, quote, stirred their spirits and hearts, end quote, brought unrest / unsettled. Perhaps the stigma of my own terms, unrest and unsettled, are harsh, however they are correct when objectified. Page 179, quote, him appealing to the hearts, end quote, one to many. It's a lot. I went quick. There's more to read.